you, Mr. Kirkby. We'll let you know. These days, it's nothing more than a valuable antique, but when this phonograph first hit the market in 1904, it and the phonographs that preceded it were part of a minor miracle. These things, with their wax cylinder recordings, altered forever the way human beings enjoy themselves. For the first time, music was available at will in the house to those not rich enough to support a private orchestra. The first recording ever made was of these words.
Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
That was in 1887. The speaker was Thomas Edison himself. Florence Nightingale, describing the Battle of Balaclava, followed. So did many other recordings of music and poetry. Tennyson, reading selections from Maud, was very popular around 1890. But cylinders were eventually replaced by flat recordings. This is the Edison Diamond Disc of 1889. Bakelite and shellac, fragile, heavy, and very, very thick. As 78s progressed, they lost a bit of weight. As the records changed, so of course did the players. This is the Ramshorn player, obvious where it got its name. The sound is taken mechanically down here and then travels acoustically up the tube and out of the horn. No amplifiers or electronics there. Sometimes these ones came with bamboo needles that had to be sharpened after every single record. By the 1920s, this was the height of elegance. It had metal needles, literally needles, very sharp indeed, and a very heavy head. It also had to be wound mechanically. Electricity, of course, was the power source by the 50s when the gramophone and the radio shared a cabinet, making the radiogram. The microgroove long-playing record now began to dominate the market, and with minor improvement, it's been with us ever since. But isn't there something better?
And what you've just been listening to is the ultimate in recorded sound. It will make all conventional disc and cassette systems obsolete. It's dustproof, scratch-proof, digitally recorded, read by a laser, and it's called the compact disc. And that's it. The biggest revolution in the recording industry since the invention of the long-playing gramophone record, but this is no ordinary disc, just 12 centimeters in diameter. The music is recorded onto it digitally, and there's no needle being dragged through a groove. That information is being read by a laser light. And this is the tiny laser that does all the work. A small low-power semiconductor which emits invisible infrared light and plays the record from inside out. Magnified 12,000 times, this is what the surface of the compact disc looks like. You can see the thousands of tiny pits and grooves which the laser has cut into a thin plastic sheet. When it's monitored or read off by another laser in the playback machine, the lengths of the grooves and the distances between them give varying light patterns, which are then picked up by a tiny diode. And unlike a conventional gramophone disc, this is totally proof against fingerprints and dust because the information is stored underneath a plastic film. It doesn't really matter how much I manhandle that particular disc, it will still continue to give very good audio quality. This is a one-sided disc. On the other side is simply the label of the record, and the record player which plays it is also surprisingly small and compact. That information is read by a laser from the underside. You simply place the disc in there like a conventional record player, and off you go.
Introducing new technology in a popular market has its own problems. Take the battle between cartridges and cassettes. It confused the consumer mightily, and it took around a decade for cassettes to establish a clear lead. The big manufacturers have learnt from that experience. With the laser audio disc, two of the biggest, Philips and Sony, have united to produce compatible hardware. Half a world away from Holland, in Tokyo, Ian Finlay found that although their players look different, the discs are exactly the same.
records for a moment. The thing is that it's very difficult to try and get across the sound to you now like this when you're listening on conventional TV set, and also we're recording on a conventional tape recorder, so we can't actually get across to you in sound terms what this thing can do. But basically it revolves around 5 things. The background noise. There's practically no background noise at all, no hiss or anything like that. There's no wow or flutter. Distortion is only 0.05%, which is very, very good, as any hi-fi buff will know. Frequency response is roughly similar to existing hi-fi sets, between 20 and 20,000 hertz. The main thing to say about the frequency response, though, is that it's absolutely flat. No pits or heights in it at all. And finally, the most important thing is the dynamic range is remarkable, 90 dB, which hi-fi buffs will agree is very remarkable.
The player itself is a huge advance over conventional record players because it gives you the same sort of control you have on a tape recorder. Fast forward and fast reverse scanning, pause and stop buttons, and the ability to instantly select any track you want. It's also got a little programmable memory so that instead of playing the tracks in their right order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on, you can select your own sequence in advance so that they play in any order you want. And all the while, the monitor tells you which track you're on and how many minutes and seconds it's been playing.
In addition, the whole thing, all of that little computerized marvel is packed into something which you can pick up and move around like that, even shake, and nothing happens, which is quite incredible. And means that it's got enormous potential eventually, once in the future, it's perhaps made a little bit more compact for the car audio industry as well.
The players are due for release at the end of '82 in Japan and the United States, in Australia and Europe sometime in '83. They'll cost between $600 and $800, and the discs should be no more expensive than records now. In a way, it all sounds too good to be true. Other systems have, heaven knows, failed to live up to their pre-release promises to change the way we listen. Quadraphonic sound, for instance, died of starvation when not enough quad records were released. But with compact discs, we're assured there will be a rolling river of material. 7 major record companies have already signed up to produce on the system. With hardware and software both lined up, compact discs may well rule the roost, at least until someone perfects a method of putting Beethoven's Ninth on a silicon chip. Don't laugh. I'm assured that that day, in fact, is not too far off.
Tonight, tracking the extreme weather, historic Hurricane Hilary threatening the West Coast and rare tornadoes striking New England. The heart-stopping video, a tornado crossing the highway in Rhode Island. The images showing extensive damage. It comes as Hurricane Hilary, now a monster Category 4 storm, barrels toward Mexico and the West Coast. The National Hurricane Center warning of life-threatening floods and issuing the first ever tropical storm watch on record for Southern California. We have the new track. Also tonight, the wildfire devastation in Maui. Maui's top emergency official abruptly resigning a day after he defended the decision not to sound emergency sirens as the fire spread. Our team in Maui. President Biden's historic summit at Camp David with the leaders of Japan and South Korea. On the agenda, confronting threats from China and North Korea. Donald Trump deciding to skip next week's first GOP presidential debate. And new reporting tonight. When will he surrender on new charges in Georgia? NBC News reports aboard an F-16 fighter jet. The U.S. today approving the shipment of F-16s to Ukraine. But how long will it take to train Ukraine's pilots to fly them? And after losing her restaurant in the fires, the top chef still cooking with compassion for Maui.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. Normally this time of year, people in the south and the east are keeping an eye open for potential hurricane threats. Tonight, however, in a historic weather twist, Americans on the west coast are on alert with an eye on Hurricane Hilary as it races northward off the Baja Peninsula. Parts of California are under the first tropical storm watch ever issued for that state. Hilary, a major Category 4 storm now, but expected to weaken by the time it reaches the U.S. Forecasters warn, though, it could still make a direct hit on California later this weekend as a tropical storm. That would be a first in 84 years. Parts of Southern California, Arizona, and Nevada tonight bracing for heavy rains and flooding. FEMA tonight pre-positioning personnel and supplies in the region. And it's not the only weather whiplash we're following tonight after a rare damaging tornado struck New England early today. Antonia Hilton is covering it all for us.
Tonight, terrifying moments during the morning commute. This tornado tearing across a Rhode Island highway, one of at least 3 to touch down in New England. The storm also ripping massive trees from their roots, leaving homes drenched and backyards reduced to a tangled mess.
About 30 seconds of hell, that's what it was.
Meanwhile, another historic storm is barreling toward the West Coast.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime event that we're going to be experiencing.
Hurricane Hilary is currently a Category 4 storm with winds of 130 miles an hour. Though it's expected to significantly weaken, officials warn there could be extensive rainfall, flash flooding, and mudslides.
FEMA has pre-positioned personnel and supplies in the region, and they're ready to respond as needed.
A tropical storm watch has been issued for Southern California for the first time.
We haven't seen hurricanes out here, and I've been calling my friends in Florida to try to get some advice on how to handle it.
California has not the best track record with driving in the rain.
Some areas like Death Valley and Palm Springs could see 2 to 3 years worth of rain in 2 to 3 days.
How different will the impacts of this on the West Coast be as compared to what we see happen in the East Coast, the Southeast?
In Southern California, we have very dry, desert-like surfaces that don't absorb that water. So as soon as that rain starts hitting, we're going to start seeing flooding.
It's been 84 years since a tropical storm hit here. A region accustomed to fires and earthquakes, now bracing for a different kind of natural disaster.
Antonia, how are officials there preparing?
The sheriff says swift water rescue teams and aircraft are available for immediate response. Parts of Joshua Tree National Park are closing, and they're doing outreach to homeless populations here, trying to keep everyone as safe as possible, Lester.
Antonia, thank you. Let's get right over to Bill Cairns now. Bill, when can we expect as far as the track and the timing of this?
Yeah, we're really focusing in on Sunday evening, Lester, and we have tropical moisture from a major hurricane heading into 10,000-foot peaks in desert areas of the Southwest. That's a recipe for disaster. That's why they're saying this could be catastrophic for some areas. Now, the storm itself is at its peak intensity. It's going to weaken after this. It's going to move from what has been really warm water, almost like 90-degree water, and then heading over water that's going to be in the 80s and eventually the 70s. That's when it gets cool enough for the storm to significantly weaken. Again, Sunday evening, this storm's going to be flying. It's going to be moving at like 30 miles per hour when it goes through Southern California. This will be in and out in a hurry, but it's going to leave its mark, especially in the mountains outside of San Diego near Palm Springs. That's where I'm afraid, Lester, up to a foot of rain, communities cut off, landslides, mudslides, all possible.
We'll be watching it throughout the weekend. Thank you, Bill. 10 days after the wildfire disaster in Maui, the island's top emergency official has resigned after criticism of his decision not to sound emergency alarms as the grim search for the missing goes on. Here's Miguel Almaguer.
All right, we're going to follow Squad 3 down here.
As the grim search for the missing approaches its 11th day and the death toll continues to climb, tonight Maui's top emergency management official has resigned. Citing health reasons, Herman Andaya has stepped down amid withering criticism. He literally failed to sound the alarm.
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not.
As the nation's deadliest fire in more than a century ripped through Lahaina, Andaya never activated the emergency sirens most often used for tsunami warnings, saying had he done so, he feared the public would have moved towards the fire in the hills.
Counties in the state of Hawaii will tell you
that sirens have not been used for brush fires.
But Maui County's website lists wildfires among the very hazards sirens can be used for.
The siren is instant, immediate. It's going off. Something's going on. I'm alert. It's sort of difficult to believe that you would be compelled to run toward flame.
Amid the growing frustration, a new NBC News review of public meeting records found Andaya repeatedly downplayed the use of sirens, calling them a last resort.
If I would have had access to that button, I would have pushed it.
Do you think the sirens going off would have saved lives?
I do, yeah.
Andaya's resignation comes as Hawaiian Electric faces multiple lawsuits alleging the utility is to blame for igniting the fires. The power company says it doesn't comment on pending litigation, stressing the causes of the fires have not been determined. It comes as the death toll balloons to well over 100, with more than half the burn zone searched.
I'm heartbroken, bro. I'm heartbroken. Words cannot explain, because I keep hearing of, people I know that I care about is still unattended for.
With upwards of 1,000 people still unaccounted for, the few who have been identified so far are mostly the elderly. The latest, 71-year-old Donna Gomes, known for her tough love and big heart. Perhaps closure for one family, as so many others brace for the same.
I want accountability. It destroyed more than half of the people we know, and just now, we're seeing the pictures of we're seeing the faces, the pictures of the people we lost.
Tonight, the pain here unimaginable, as is the loss.
Miguel, it's been so long now. These stories of the missing are heartbreaking. I know behind you the search continues in the burn zone.
It does, Lester, and now the ATF is on the ground. Their job is to get to the bottom of what started this fire. By the end of this weekend, authorities hope to have the entire burn zone searched, but we also expect the death toll to spike dramatically. Lester.
All right, Miguel, thank you. Meanwhile, a huge wildfire in Canada's Northwest Territories is threatening the capital and has forced thousands to evacuate. It's one of more than 1,000 fires burning across Canada. The smoke is continuing to affect air quality in Minnesota and Wisconsin. A strong show of unity today among the United States, Japan, and South Korea as President Biden met with their leaders at Camp David as threats from China and North Korea play out in the Pacific. Here's Kelly O'Donnell.
For the first time, President Biden hosted an international summit at Camp David today.
We meet in this historic place to make a historic moment.
Bringing together Japan and South Korea, each longtime U.S. allies, but notably the two neighbors only recently softened their own decades of tension. Together now, facing common risks from North Korea's nuclear provocations and China's more aggressive show of military strength in the region, while also recognizing all three countries trade with China.
Today is a day that is not about being against anything. It is about being for something.
Today's summit announcing a range of security and economic agreements, including a new defense partnership to swiftly consult on urgent threats.
That means we'll have a hotline to share information and coordinate our responses whenever there is a crisis in the region.
While standing shoulder to shoulder with world leaders, a more personal matter surfaced after one full week of silence on the appointment of a special counsel investigating his son Hunter's business dealings. The president was pressed to respond.
I have no comment on any investigation that's going on. That's up to the Justice Department, and that's all I have to say.
Today's setting here at Camp David is itself a message about the significance of the meetings. Presidents past have also used this retreat at pivotal moments.
A place that has long symbolized the power of new beginnings and new possibilities.
Kelly joining us now from Camp David. Kelly, both visiting leaders acknowledged the Hawaii fires.
They did, Lester. Japan and South Korea are each donating $2 million in relief efforts for Maui. And on China, President Biden says he expects to speak with Xi Jinping again this fall.
Lester?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, thank you. With the first Republican primary debate days away, there's word former President Trump will skip it as we learn more about the timing of his expected surrender in Atlanta. Blaine Alexander joins us now. Blaine, what more do we know?
Well, Lester, Mr. Trump will not be on that debate stage next week. That's according to two people familiar with his thinking. Instead, he's seeking a sit-down interview with Tucker Carlson. Now, this would be a snub to both the RNC and Fox News, which is broadcasting this debate. Meanwhile, we're getting new guidance tonight on when former President Trump might come to Georgia and turn himself in after being indicted here earlier this week. 3 senior law enforcement sources and officials tell NBC News that officials are preparing for the former president to come down and surrender at the Fulton County Jail late next week, no earlier than Thursday, though they stress plans have not been finalized yet. Now, remember, the district attorney here has given Mr. Trump and his 18 co-defendants until next Friday at noon to turn themselves in. Lester.
Blaine Alexander, thank you. Now to Kentucky, where the second day of school came more than a week after the first in Louisville. It's because of what's being called a transportation disaster and the bus driver shortage impacting schools nationwide. Here's Maggie Vespa.
Buses are rolling once again in Louisville with an estimated 40,000 elementary and middle school students riding to their second day of classes in Kentucky's largest district. This after last week's so-called transportation disaster fueled by a shortage of drivers.
Still waiting on this bus at 9:10.
It slowed routes so much some students didn't get home until after dark. Parents called police fearing kids were missing. School canceled for more than a week, resumed today.
It was bad.
But the shortage looms. Some parents drove their kids after buses were late again this morning.
You're inconveniencing us all around.
Love you. Bye.
Others say the bus came on time.
How nervous were you going into today?
Pretty nervous. I did go out and get some air tags just so I could keep track of their backpacks.
Jefferson County Superintendent notes the district has close to 600 drivers, down from 900 a decade ago.
We've dramatically increased the pay over the past several years. I mean, we have bus drivers making upwards of $30 an hour. We're going to have to look at some deeper issues.
For now, the district leaning on short-term fixes like cutting stops, even tapping delivery giant UPS for help streamlining routes, and soon releasing an app letting parents track a bus's location. Similar scrambles underway coast to coast, with a staggering 92% of school leaders nationwide short on bus drivers.
It has now reached crisis levels. It was really exacerbated by the pandemic.
Back here in Louisville, today actually marked the start of a staggered return. Next week, high schoolers will also come back, testing this district even more. Lester?
Maggie Vespa, thank you. In 60 seconds, a pioneering treatment for people who have lost vision from an eye injury. The remarkable way it works using the body's own cells. Right after this. We're back now with a potential medical breakthrough giving new hope to people with blindness. A study just out on an experimental surgery to restore vision to one damaged eye with stem cells from the other. Kristen Dahlgren explains.
Straight in 25, clear the land.
Nick Carufe always dreamed of being a pilot.
I figured that would be a perfect career path for me.
And he was well on his way until a freak accident on July 4th, 2020, near his home in California.
We were watching the fireworks. Instead of shooting up in the air, it exploded on the floor. I unfortunately took a direct hit to my left eye, dead center.
The eye blinded.
Thought my life was done. I didn't really know if it was going to ever get better.
Until he heard about a completely new procedure being done at Mass Eye and Ear.
It looks very good.
Dr. Ula Yarkunis and her team pioneered a procedure they call CALIC, using stem cells to restore the cornea in the damaged eye of patients with severe injuries.
It is possible to take a small biopsy of these stem cells, grow them in the laboratory, and then transplant them onto the patient's eye, taking it from healthy eye to the diseased eye.
In a phase 1 study of the first 4 patients, all saw marked improvement. 2 saw significantly better without additional treatment, and the other 2 were able to go on to get artificial corneas.
Look a little bit up and down.
Nick moved to Boston and is now one of a new group of patients receiving the surgery.
At what point did you realize it had worked?
Not too long after the first surgery, I was able to see. It was this whole thing, and I was crying.
While still in its early stages, doctors consider this a stepping stone. and say stem cell therapies may someday go beyond corneal injuries to things like glaucoma, maybe even other parts of the body. Nick is now flying again for fun.
Especially to see even just the blue sky out of the left side is so crazy because I never thought I would ever see that ever again.
For the first time in a long time, seeing hope. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, Boston.
And up next here tonight, an update on American F-16s headed for Ukraine as we ride inside a fighter jet. Months after President Biden pledged F-16s for Ukraine, the U.S. today gave the final okay, but it could be next year before they see action. Ellison Barber with our report from the air.
It's the jet everyone seems to be talking about.
We should sell them the F-16 jets.
Ukrainian F-16 pilots.
The F-16.
F-16s.
The
F-16s. F-16.
Ukrainian officials thought they'd have pilots training on American-made F-16s by now, but it has not happened yet. A spokesperson with Ukraine's Air Force says the first group of pilots will begin training in Denmark, but that training might not be complete before summer 2024, according to a U.S. official who spoke to NBC News on the condition of anonymity, saying Ukraine only recently submitted names of pilots who will undergo training, and over half need English language training first. The delays have confused and frustrated Ukrainian officials, as well as rank-and-file military members who spoke to NBC News privately. Major Jeffrey Downey, Simmer, flies F-16s almost every day.
The G-forces that are exerted on your body are immense. You know, you've got the blood rushing from your head to your feet, and you're having to strain to keep the blood up in your head so that you don't pass out.
Simmer is part of the U.S. Air Force's Thunderbirds. In peacetime, they're known for dazzling crowds.
Why are F-16s so esteemed around the globe?
It's a multi-role fighter, so it does air-to-air and air-to-ground. Suppression of enemy air defenses, it's got it all.
To get a sense of their capabilities, I went along for a flight. The power, the seamless turns, it's hard to describe. Ukraine still believes this type of fighter jet is vital for the country's defense. And tonight, U.S. officials maintain Ukraine will get F-16s as soon as training is complete. Ellison Barber, NBC News.
Coming up, when her kitchen was destroyed, one top chef knew her next mission was to feed her island. Finally tonight, she's caring for her neighbors in Maui, showing them what it really means to be a top chef. Here's Steve Patterson.
As those ravenous flames consumed Lahaina street by street, some said it felt like the very soul of Maui was being swallowed.
It is the heart of Hawaiian culture and history. There's so much that's been lost.
Somewhere, buried among the ruins, Chef Leanne Wong's pride and joy, her restaurant Papa'aina.
We've lost an entire town.
She says 80% of her staff lost their homes.
Could you drain that for me?
To the mainland, Wong is an exciting culinary personality, a frequent contestant on cooking competition shows like NBC's sister network Bravo's Top Chef. Here, she's a local treasure. And now head chef of the island's effort to feed hot meals to people who've lost everything.
We're here to say, hey, we see you, we want to cook for you, we want to feed you.
Every day since the fire, this group of dedicated chefs, cooks, and volunteers serve about 10,000 meals.
Taco meat.
Another Top Chef alum, Maui's Sheldon Simeon, is heading up the kitchen.
We take it for granted when we have it, right? That nourishing meal. And, if we could do our part by giving food, food is medicine.
It's hard, but Wong says serving others is healing.
Have you had time to reflect and think about Lahaina?
Oh. Everybody on this island is our family, and we're all hooing together to see what we can do to how to lift each other up and hold each other up.
Truth is, Hawaii's soul was never in the bones of old buildings, but in the beating hearts of its people. Steve Patterson, NBC News, Maui.
That's what community is all about. That's Nightly News for this Friday. Thanks for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night.
because it expresses somewhat how we feel about you and what you've done for us over the years. I've had my share of life's ups and downs, but it's been kind, and the downs have been few. I guess you could say that I've been lucky. Oh, I guess you could say that it's
This is a likeness, but I think when you can reveal something about the inner life of a person and how the portrait is rendered, I think that's when something more interesting occurs. So I'm really hopeful that I'm able to get a bit more of his interior life. Sir Jeff, how are you? What a pleasure to meet you.
Nice, it's nice meeting you too.
I did a degree in honours botany. I had no idea what I was going to do with the honours degree, no idea. I went back to London to my mum, and I went to the Labour Exchange, and I stood in the queue, and I went up and I said to the guy, I'm looking for a job, and he said, well, what can you do? And I said, I've got a degree. And he turned to his friend and he said, here, Johnny, he says, this guy's got a temperature. Degree, temperature. And he was making fun of the fact that there was a black guy in the Labour Exchange at Seven Sisters Road who said he got a degree. He didn't believe it. And one may think, oh, that was racist then. A couple of days ago, somebody said, who are you? And I said, on your list, you'll see it's Professor Sir Jeff Palmer. And she said, is he the person you're looking for? And that was last week.
My own father is someone who, I think experienced success despite great odds. I know at some point Sir Jeff Palmer was a potato peeler even after he finished university, and a lot of that is evidence of the structural racism that he was working against. And I think with figures like him, we see their accomplishments, and they hide a lot of the scars. And I think, for me, I'm interested in where the discomfort lies and what he might be keeping beneath the surface, and how we can bring that into a richer understanding of who he is. So my parents are from Ghana.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so fathers are not expected to raise their children.
Well.
The women raise the children.
Mm-hmm.
And,
oh, yeah.